This unidentified creature was found in the Mariana Trench. It has a very strange underside. This mysterious creature is known as...
For as long as explorative science can recall, the ocean has always been understood mostly through theory, rather than direct observation. Scientists assumed that beyond certain depths, life couldn't exist. The rationale was based on conditions that were too hostile for survival. However, just recently, cameras sent into the Mariana Trench told a different story. Footage from the Mariana Trench just revealed something alive at 36,000 feet. This is not just crazy, it should never even exist. Join us in this video as we explore the recent deep-sea discovery that is changing what scientists believe about marine life. The deepest part of the Earth, Mariana Trench. Far out in the western Pacific Ocean, about 200 miles east of the Mariana Islands, lies the deepest place ever discovered on Earth, the Mariana Trench. Hidden nearly 7 miles beneath the ocean's surface, it is a world almost completely cut off from everything above it. The trench was first measured in 1875 by a British survey ship called the Challenger. Its deepest point, later named Challenger Deep after the expedition, reaches an astonishing depth of about 10,900 meters, roughly 6.75 miles down. To put that into perspective, it is more than a kilometer deeper than Mount Everest is tall. At that depth, the environment is almost unimaginable. The water is close to freezing. The pressure is over 1,000 times greater than what humans experience at sea level. No sunlight reaches that far down, and none has for millions of years, not since complex life first appeared on Earth. For decades, scientists believed the bottom of the trench had to be a barren underwater desert. According to traditional biology, life there should have been rare and slow-moving, surviving only on tiny scraps of dead material drifting down from the surface far above. That assumption lasted through most of the 20th century, but it turned out to be wrong. In the past decade, a new generation of deep-sea submersibles has changed everything. Unlike earlier missions that could only touch the seafloor briefly, these advanced machines can now remain at the bottom for hours at a time, recording continuous footage of the darkness below. Their cameras are stronger, their pressure-resistant hulls are tougher, their ability to stay deep underwater has dramatically improved, and what they have captured in the deepest parts of the Mariana Trench, much of it still unseen by the public, is forcing scientists to rethink what they thought they knew about life surviving at the very edge of possibility. What scientists have actually recorded at the bottom of the Mariana Trench is beginning to change our understanding of life in the deep ocean. Over the last decade, footage collected from the trench has revealed a growing number of species and behaviors nobody expected to find at such extreme depths. The old belief that the deepest place on Earth was little more than a lifeless underwater desert is now collapsing under new evidence. To understand why these discoveries matter so much, you first have to understand how difficult it is even to reach the bottom of the Mariana Trench. Until recently, almost nobody could stay there long enough to properly observe what lived below. The Hadal Zone, the deepest region of the ocean found below 6,000 meters, remains one of the least explored places on Earth. In fact, more people have walked on the moon than have traveled to the bottom of the Mariana Trench. The reason comes down to pressure. At sea level, the human body experiences about 1 bar of atmospheric pressure, the weight of the air pressing down from above. But in the ocean, pressure increases rapidly with depth. For every 10 meters you descend, the pressure rises by another bar. At the bottom of Challenger Deep, the pressure exceeds 1,000 bars. That is roughly 16,000 pounds of force pressing against every square inch. Under those conditions, the human body would be crushed instantly. Ordinary submarines would implode. Even specially designed deep-sea vehicles can only survive there through extraordinary engineering that pushes materials to their limits. So, how did people get there? How did explorations fare? Keep watching to find out. The first people to ever reach the Mariana Trench, the first people to ever reach the bottom of Challenger Deep, were Jacques Piccard and Don Walsh. On January 23, 1960, they descended into the bathyscaphe Trieste, becoming the first humans to reach the deepest known point on Earth. The descent took nearly 5 hours. But once they finally reached the bottom of Challenger Deep, Jacques Piccard and Don Walsh could only remain there for about 20 minutes before beginning the long trip back to the surface. And during that short time, they saw almost nothing. When the bathyscaphe Trieste touched down, it stirred up thick clouds of sediment that blocked much of the seafloor from view. Their observation window was tiny, their lights were weak. The mission proved that humans could physically survive the journey to the deepest place on Earth, but it revealed very little about what actually lived there. Then, for the next 52 years, no human returned. Music. The technology needed to observe life at such crushing depths simply did not exist yet. Unmanned vehicles had slightly better luck, but even they struggled to survive the Hadal Zone. In 1995, the Japanese remotely operated vehicle Kaiko reached the bottom of Challenger Deep and captured rare footage of the seafloor, but the vehicle was lost at sea in 2003. Later, in 2009, the American hybrid remotely operated vehicle Nereus also managed to reach Challenger Deep. Yet even that breakthrough did not last. In 2014, the vehicle imploded during a dive in the Kermadec Trench. Again and again, the Hadal Zone destroyed the machines sent to explore it. That is what makes the old assumptions about deep ocean life so remarkable. Scientists believed the deepest parts of the ocean were nearly barren, but that belief was based on very little direct evidence. In reality, researchers had barely seen the environment at all. The logic behind the assumption seemed reasonable at the time. Sunlight cannot penetrate deeper than about 200 meters into the ocean. Below that point, photosynthesis becomes impossible. Without sunlight, there is no plant life producing energy. That means every living thing in the deep ocean depends on food drifting down from above. Dead plankton, decaying fish, whale carcasses, and tiny particles of organic material known as marine snow. As the depth increases, less and less of this material survives the journey downward. Most of it gets eaten or decomposes long before it can reach the ocean floor. By the time scientists considered the immense depths of the Mariana Trench, they assumed almost nothing usable would remain. So, the theory was simple. The deepest trenches on Earth could only support a small number of highly specialized scavengers, surviving on whatever scraps happened to fall from the world above. But that assumption turned out to be spectacularly wrong. The breakthrough came with a new kind of technology, deep-sea landers. A deep-sea lander works in a surprisingly simple way. It is essentially a heavy frame equipped with cameras, lights, and bait lowered to the ocean floor and left there to record whatever creatures appear. After a set amount of time, a signal releases the weights attached to it, allowing the lander to float back to the surface where scientists can recover the footage. Compared to crude submersibles or remotely operated vehicles, landers are cheaper, simpler, and far easier to deploy repeatedly. Most importantly, they can remain on the seafloor for long periods, quietly observing life in places humans can barely reach. What did they discover? How did that affect the long-held beliefs about where life could exist? Let's see. What they found. One of the leading scientists behind this approach was Alan Jamieson of the University of Western Australia. Beginning in the early 2000s, his team started systematically deploying baited landers into some of the deepest trenches on Earth, including the Mariana Trench, the Kermadec Trench, the Japan Trench, and the Philippine Trench. What the cameras recorded changed the scientific picture completely. The first surprise was that the Hadal Zone was not empty at all. It was alive and busy. Only minutes after a lander touched the seafloor, creatures would begin gathering around it. Within hours, the bait was often completely swarmed. The most common animals were amphipods, small crustaceans that resemble shrimp. Some measured only a few centimeters long, while others reached nearly 30 centimeters at extreme depths. But what shocked researchers was not just their size, it was their behavior. The amphipods attacked the bait aggressively and in huge numbers. They moved with an energy and intensity that completely contradicted the long-held idea that deep-sea life had to be slow, weak, and barely surviving. These creatures were not cautiously conserving energy in a barren wasteland. They were active, competitive scavengers, feeding at rates scientists once thought impossible under such crushing pressure and freezing temperatures. And the amphipods were only part of the story. The footage revealed entire communities of organisms interacting with one another, feeding, competing, and apparently thriving in an environment once believed to be nearly uninhabitable. Then came an even bigger surprise. The fish appeared. Music. For decades, scientists believed fish could not survive deeper than about 8,000 meters. The argument was based on biology and chemistry. At extreme pressures, proteins begin to break apart, cell membranes lose stability, and the basic metabolic systems needed to sustain complex animals stop functioning properly.
According to conventional science, fish simply should not have been able to exist at those depths. But the cameras showed otherwise. Deep-sea fish already possess remarkable adaptations that allow them to survive in some of the harshest environments on Earth. Their bodies contain specialized proteins, pressure-resistant cell membranes, and softer, less calcified bones that can withstand the crushing force of the deep ocean. But, for decades, scientists believed there had to be a limit. Somewhere below 8,000 meters, the pressure was thought to become too extreme for fish to survive. The biological adjustments required would simply be too great. According to the accepted theory, fish life beyond that depth should have been impossible. Then, the landers proved otherwise. In 2014, the team led by Alan Jameson captured footage of a previously unknown species of snailfish swimming at around 8,100 meters deep in the Mariana Trench. Snailfish are not the terrifying predators often shown in deep-sea documentaries. They are small, soft-bodied, almost fragile-looking creatures, more like translucent tadpoles than monstrous hunters with giant teeth. Yet, this fish was calmly living deeper than any fish ever recorded before. The footage showed it swimming normally, appearing healthy and fully adapted to an environment where scientists believed fish should not even exist. Researchers later identified the species as Mariana snailfish. Its discovery forced scientists to rethink the biological limits of vertebrate life. One researcher studying the species was Mackenzie Geringer, who analyzed tissue samples from the Mariana snailfish to understand how it survived under such extraordinary pressure. The answer centered around a compound called trimethylamine N-oxide, better known as TMAO. TMAO helps stabilize proteins so they do not collapse under extreme pressure. In deep-sea fish, the concentration of TMAO increases with depth. The deeper the fish lives, the more TMAO its body contains. The Mariana snailfish possessed the highest levels of TMAO ever recorded in any fish, but there was a problem. What was it, and what was it going to prove? Keep watching to find out. Revealed, something that shouldn't exist is alive at 36,000 feet below the sea. Scientists realized that TMAO itself has limits. At extremely high concentrations, the compound can begin interfering with normal protein function instead of protecting it. Based on the chemistry, researchers calculated that fish physiology should hit a hard boundary somewhere between 8,200 and 8,400 meters deep. Beyond that point, the biochemistry required to keep fish alive would likely become impossible, which meant the Mariana snailfish was already living dangerously close to the absolute theoretical limit for fish life on Earth. No fish has ever been recorded below roughly 8,300 meters. The snailfish may therefore sit right at the outer edge of what fish biology can tolerate, not because food disappears completely, but because the chemistry that makes life possible begins to fail under extreme pressure. Yet, fish are only part of the story. The footage from the Hadal Zone shows entire ecosystems. The deepest parts of the ocean are not uniform or empty. They vary from place to place, in sediment type, in terrain, and in the kind of organic material that reaches them from above. These differences shape the communities that form on the seafloor. In some regions, scientists observed dense populations of single-celled giants known as xenophyophores, massive, fragile organisms that build intricate structures on the sediment surface and are among the largest individual cells known to science. In other areas, sea cucumbers slowly moved across the seabed, feeding on whatever organic matter they could extract from the sediment. These holothurians act like living recyclers, breaking down material that has drifted down from higher in the ocean. Elsewhere, researchers saw what looked like microbial mats, thick layers of bacteria and archaea forming visible films across rocks and sediment, quietly processing nutrients at the smallest scale of life. What stood out most was not just the presence of life, but its abundance. The diversity, density, and activity levels were far higher than anyone expected. It overturned the long-held belief that the deepest ocean was a cold, static, nearly lifeless desert. The question then shifted from whether life exists there to how it survives at all. If so little food is supposed to reach these depths, what is sustaining such complex communities? The answer turns out to be more dynamic than the old model suggested. Food does reach the Hadal zone faster and in larger, more sudden bursts than scientists once believed. Instead of only relying on a slow, constant trickle of marine snow, the deep ocean also receives larger, high-energy inputs. Falling whale carcasses, dead fish, and massive surface die-offs following plankton blooms. Rather than a steady starvation environment, the trench floor experiences sudden pulses of rich nourishment. These rare but significant events help sustain deep-sea populations between long periods of scarcity, reshaping how scientists now understand life at the very bottom of the ocean. Amphipods, in particular, seem to thrive on a kind of feast or famine survival strategy. They can go for long stretches with almost no food, conserving energy in extreme conditions. But the moment a large food source appears, like a dead whale or fish, they rapidly switch modes. They become intensely active, swarming the carcass and consuming it as quickly as possible before returning to a low-energy state once the food is gone. In this way, their survival is tied to rare but powerful bursts of nutrition rather than constant feeding. Another important factor is the shape of the trenches themselves. Deep ocean trenches act like natural funnels. As organic material drifts down from the surface, it is spread across a wide area of the ocean above. But as it sinks deeper, the narrowing geography of the trench causes much of that material to converge toward the bottom. This means the seafloor inside a trench like the Mariana may actually receive more concentrated food than a flat seafloor at the same depth elsewhere in the ocean. There is also growing evidence that life in the Hadal zone does not rely entirely on surface-derived food. In some deep-sea environments, such as hydrothermal vents and cold seeps, microbial communities survive through chemosynthesis, extracting energy from chemical reactions involving substances like hydrogen sulfide and methane instead of sunlight. So, what keeps these organisms alive? How do they survive such depths? Let's see. Living beyond the possible. Scientists now suspect that similar processes may also exist in trenches, where bacteria could be producing energy directly from chemicals in the surrounding sediment or from fluids released beneath the Earth's crust. If this is true, then parts of the deep ocean food web may be partially independent of the surface entirely. Modern deep-sea landers and submersibles have made it possible to observe these systems in ways that were never before possible. Instead of brief, incomplete glimpses, researchers can now record extended behavior on the seafloor and begin to understand how these ecosystems actually function. In 2012, filmmaker and explorer James Cameron became the third person to reach the bottom of Challenger Deep. He descended alone in the submersible deep-sea Challenger, reaching a depth of about 10,900 meters. Although his time at the bottom was short, roughly 3 hours, it provided one of the most detailed human observations of the trench to date. Finally, tonight, a voyage deep into the sea. A famous filmmaker and explorer made that journey yesterday to the bottom of the Pacific, a place known as the Mariana Trench's Challenger Deep. Technical issues limited his ability to collect samples, but his cameras captured clear footage of the seafloor, including sediment patterns, terrain features, and visible signs of life. In 2019, explorer Victor Vescovo went even deeper as part of the 5 Deeps expedition, a mission aimed at reaching the deepest point in each of the world's oceans. He piloted the Deep Submergence Vehicle limiting factor to the bottom of the Challenger Deep, recording a depth of about 10,928 meters, deeper than any previous human dive. At the bottom, he spent roughly 4 hours observing the seafloor. His footage recorded life at the deepest point ever directly witnessed by a human. Amphipods were still present, along with what appeared to be sea cucumbers and other translucent organisms that had yet to be fully identified. Even in this extreme environment, life was clearly active, but the dive also revealed something far more unsettling. Among the sediment and biological material, there were traces of human pollution, a plastic bag, candy wrappers, and microplastics embedded in the seafloor. At nearly 7 miles beneath the ocean's surface, in a place unreachable until just decades ago, human debris had already arrived. This discovery has since become one of the most widely reported findings in modern Hadal research. While it is not the most important result scientifically, it is one of the most revealing in a broader sense. It shows that even the deepest, most remote environment on Earth is not isolated from human activity. Subsequent studies have confirmed microplastic contamination in both the sediments and the tissues of Hadal organisms like amphipods. The same currents that carry organic marine snow to the seafloor also transport fragments of human waste into these depths. In other words, creatures adapted to survive pressures that would instantly crush a human are now ingesting the byproducts of human civilization. The exploration continues, but so does the footprint. Institutions like the Schmidt Ocean Institute, operating the research vessel Falkor, have carried out multiple expeditions into the Mariana Trench and other Hadal environments. Using advanced remotely operated vehicles, these missions are able to descend to extreme depths, capture high-definition footage, and collect physical samples directly from the seafloor. At the same time, organizations such as the Japan Agency for Marine Earth Science and Technology continue long-running research programs across the Western Pacific trenches. Building on decades of Japanese leadership in deep ocean exploration, these efforts, along with work from academic institutions around the world, are steadily reshaping how scientists understand life in the deepest parts of the ocean. With each new expedition, the species inventory continues to grow. Researchers are discovering new kinds of amphipods, snailfish, sea cucumbers, polychaete worms, and even organisms that do not fit neatly into existing biological classifications. The Mariana Trench may be the deepest point, but it is not unique. The Kermadec Trench, the Tonga Trench, the Philippine Trench, and the Japan Trench each host distinct Hadal ecosystems with their own endemic species and ecological dynamics. Depth alone does not mean isolation or uniformity. How many other organisms would be discovered in the coming months? What does this tell us about theoretical science? Keep watching to find out. New discoveries. Over the past decade, the growing body of footage and data represents the first truly comprehensive visual record of life at the extreme limits of the ocean. And what it reveals consistently contradicts older expectations. The Hadal zone is not empty. It is not static. It not lifeless. It is diverse, active, and in its own way remarkably resilient. Even at depths where pressure pushes the boundaries of known biology, life continues to adapt. Snailfish, for example, survive at around 8,000 meters, with biochemical systems operating at the very edge of protein stability. A reminder that evolution has found ways to persist even under conditions once thought impossible. The amphipods that swarm around baited landers within minutes are doing so in conditions that should, by older assumptions, slow life almost to a halt. The temperatures are near freezing, the pressure is immense, and yet their metabolic activity is intense, almost too intense to easily reconcile with the environment they inhabit. Some of the only animals on the planet that can reach full ocean depth. A lot of amphipods, music, are specialized to the Hadal zone, so 6,000 meters and below. Alongside them, microbial communities spread across rocks, and sediment are quietly carrying out chemical processes that science is still working to fully understand. These microbes are not just surviving, they are actively transforming the chemistry of the seafloor in ways that are only now becoming clear. Taken together, this evidence has replaced the old idea of the deep ocean as a place of extreme scarcity with something far more nuanced. The Hadal Zone is undeniably harsh by human standards. It is an environment that filters life aggressively, allowing only organisms with highly specialized adaptations to persist. But within those limits, life is barely hanging on. It is established, structured, and persistent. Evolution has not merely tolerated these depths, it has filled them. The footage makes that difficult to ignore, and the implications reach far beyond Earth's oceans. If life can survive and even diversify at the very bottom of the deepest ocean on Earth, it raises a natural question about other extreme environments in the universe. Moons such as Europa and Enceladus are believed to contain vast oceans beneath thick layers of ice. If those oceans exist, they would be dark, cold, and under extreme pressure, conditions not unlike those found in the Hadal Zone. The key realization from deep-sea research is not that life requires comfortable conditions, but that it can adapt to far more extreme ones than previously imagined. On Earth, natural selection operates over immense timescales. Music, gradually producing organisms finely tuned to their environments. The Mariana snailfish is one example of this process pushed to an extreme, a vertebrate functioning at pressures once thought biologically impossible. If evolution can produce such organisms here, the question of what it might produce elsewhere becomes less abstract and more grounded in observed reality. Because of this, modern astrobiology increasingly looks to Hadal ecosystems as a reference point. The biology of Earth's deepest trenches, music, is now used to help shape expectations for what life might look like beneath the ice of other worlds. Back on Earth, these discoveries also carry practical significance. The Hadal Zone may hold biochemical tools of great scientific value, enzymes that remain stable under extreme pressure, proteins with unusual resilience, and metabolic systems capable of processing chemicals in ways not seen in surface organisms. These adaptations are not just curiosities. They may offer insight into new forms of biology and biotechnology. What makes the Mariana Trench even more spectacular? Let's see. Inside the Mariana. The Mariana Trench is part of a massive underwater system called the Izubonin-Mariana Subduction Zone. This is where two tectonic plates meet. In this area, the Pacific Plate slowly slides beneath the smaller Mariana Plate to the west. Scientists call this process subduction. The edge of the Pacific Plate here is extremely old. Some of the oldest ocean crust on Earth, around 170 million years old. Because it is older, it is colder and much denser than the younger Mariana Plate. That difference in density is one of the main reasons the Mariana Trench is so incredibly deep. The deepest section is known as the Mariana Trench proper. The movement of these plates also helped create the Mariana Islands. As the Pacific Plate sinks deeper beneath the Mariana Plate, water trapped inside the rock is released into the mantle above it. This causes part of the mantle to melt, leading to volcanic activity that eventually formed the islands. The trench was first measured in 1875 during the Challenger expedition. Scientists used a weighted rope to measure the depth and recorded about 8,184 meters. Later, in 1877, a map titled Tiefenkarte des Großen Ozeans identified the area as Challenger Deep. In 1899, the USS Nero took another measurement and found the trench to be even deeper, about 9,636 meters. Then, in 1951, the research ship Challenger 2 surveyed the trench using echo sounding, a far more accurate method than ropes and draglines. During that mission, scientists recorded the deepest known point of the trench at around 10,900 meters. This location became famously known as Challenger Deep. In 1957, the Soviet research ship Vityaz reported an even greater depth in the Mariana Trench, about 11,034 meters. The location was given the name Mariana Hollow. While scientists were exploring the trench's incredible depths, they also discovered something disturbing. In 2016, researchers studying crustaceans collected from depths between 7,841 and 10,250 meters found extremely high levels of PCBs, toxic industrial chemicals that had been banned since the 1970s because of their environmental dangers. Even at the deepest parts of the ocean, these pollutants had made their way into living organisms. The discoveries became even more alarming when scientists found that amphipods, small shrimp-like creatures living in the trench, had also swallowed microplastics. In fact, every music amphipod examined contained at least one piece of synthetic material in its stomach. Then, in 2019, explorer Victor Vescovo reported seeing a plastic bag and candy wrappers at the bottom of the Mariana Trench itself. Around the same time, Scientific American revealed another unsettling discovery. Traces of carbon-14 from Cold War nuclear bomb testing had been detected in animals living deep inside the trench. Even in the most remote and inaccessible places on Earth, evidence of human activity and pollution has reached the ocean floor. Like many other deep ocean trenches, the Mariana Trench was once considered a possible place to dispose of nuclear waste. Scientists believed that because tectonic plates in the area are constantly moving, the waste might eventually be pulled deep into Earth's mantle through the process of subduction. In 1979, Japan even proposed dumping low-level nuclear waste near Maui in the northern Mariana Islands. However, the idea faced serious criticism and was ultimately blocked. International law now prohibits the dumping of nuclear waste into the ocean. Scientists also pointed out major safety concerns. Subduction zones like the Mariana Trench are closely linked to massive megathrust earthquakes, some of the most powerful earthquakes on Earth. Because these events are unpredictable, no guarantee that buried nuclear waste would remain safely contained over long periods of time. There were also fears about the impact on the trench's fragile deep-sea ecosystem. What do you think about the shocking things scientists just found in the Mariana Trench? Share your thoughts in the comment section below. Thank you for joining us to explore the Mariana Trench and the new life forms just found there. We hope you found this video both informative and interesting. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Click the next video on your screen to explore more interesting discoveries. See you there!